I caught my boyfriend rehearsing his "it's not you, it's me" breakup speech in the mirror, fake tears, dramatic sighs, the whole performance. Then I checked his phone, a video titled "Breaking Up with a Needy One." I said nothing. I waited until dinner. I let him finish his little speech. Then I pulled out my phone, hit play, and let his video fill the room. He went pale. I, 27F, have been dating Seth, 29M, for 3 years. We met at a friend's birthday party, one of those crowded apartment gatherings where the music's too loud and everyone's crammed into too small a space. He was the guy making old fashions in the kitchen, measuring ingredients with the precision of a chemist while everyone else was doing tequila shots. Something about his focus amid the chaos caught my attention. We talked until 3 a.m. that night, sitting on the fire escape while the party raged on without us, discussing everything from our childhood pets to our wildest dreams. We hit it off immediately, and have been together ever since. For the most part, things have been good. We moved in together a year ago into a cozy 2-bedroom with a tiny balcony where I started growing herbs and tomatoes. Seth complained about the dirt but loved using the fresh basil in his cooking. We developed routines together: Sunday morning coffee runs, Thursday night takeout, alternating who chooses the movie on weekends. And while we've had our share of arguments like any couple, his workaholic tendencies, my apparent inability to load the dishwasher correctly, I thought we were solid. Building something real. Something that would last. I'm not the jealous type. I've never been one to snoop through my partner's phone or demand to know where they are at every moment. Trust is important to me, and I've always believed that without it, a relationship is doomed. So what I'm about to tell you is completely out of character for me, but I need to share what happened. Last Thursday, I came home early from work. I wasn't feeling well, just a mild headache, nothing serious, but my boss is pretty understanding about mental health days, so she told me to go home and rest. Seth works from home 3 days a week, and Thursday is one of those days. I didn't text him that I was coming home because I figured I'd surprise him and maybe we could have lunch together. When I got home, I heard his voice coming from our bedroom. At first, I thought he was on a work call, so I quietly set my bag down and kicked off my shoes. But as I got closer to the bedroom, I realized he wasn't talking to someone else. He was talking to himself. "It's not you, it's me," he said, and immediately I froze in the hallway. I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about where we're going, and I just don't see a future together anymore. My stomach dropped. Was he practicing a breakup speech? I inched closer to the partially open door and peered in. Seth was standing in front of our full-length mirror, his phone propped up on the dresser, apparently recording himself. His face was contorted in what I can only describe as performative anguish, complete with a furrowed brow and downturned mouth. "I care about you so much," he continued, his voice cracking in a way that sounded completely artificial. "That's why this is so hard for me to say." And then, I swear I'm not making this up, he squeezed his eyes shut, and when he opened them again, they were brimming with tears. Actual tears. He dabbed at them with his sleeve, took a deep, dramatic breath, and sighed so heavily you'd think he was Atlas carrying the weight of the world. I stood there, frozen in disbelief. Was this actually happening? Was my boyfriend of 3 years rehearsing how to dump me? I must have made a sound because suddenly he whipped around, spotted me in the doorway, and fumbled to grab his phone. "Hey. You're home early," he said, his voice jumping an octave higher than normal. The tears had vanished instantly. "I was just, practicing for a work presentation." "A work presentation?" "Right. Because it's not you, it's me is standard corporate jargon." "Are you okay?" he asked, noticing my expression. I mumbled something about a headache and needing to lie down in the guest room. He looked relieved and said he had calls for the rest of the afternoon anyway. Once alone, I tried to process what I'd witnessed. Maybe I was misinterpreting things. Maybe it really was for work somehow. But deep down, I knew what I'd seen. Still, I needed to be sure before confronting him. I decided to act normal for the rest of the day. We had dinner together, watched a show, and then he said he needed to finish some work. I pretended to read a book while my mind raced. After he fell asleep that night, I did something I've never done before. I checked his phone. I know, major invasion of privacy. But I needed to know the truth. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. In his photo gallery was a video from earlier that day titled "Breaking Up with a Needy One." The needy one. 3 years together, and that's what I was to him. Not Emma or even my girlfriend. The needy one. I watched the video, my hand clamped over my mouth to keep from making any noise. It was exactly what I partially witnessed, a full 2-minute rehearsal of his breakup speech, complete with manufactured emotion and carefully practiced facial expressions. There were even little notes to himself at the end, maybe mention her clingy behavior? And remember to look sad, not relieved. But that wasn't all. I scrolled through his gallery and found more videos, each labeled with different approaches: breaking up, compassionate version, breaking up, firm version, and worst of all, breaking up, if she cries. He had planned for every scenario, every potential reaction I might have, like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person he'd shared 3 years with. In the "If She Cries" video, his face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "I need you to pull yourself together," video Seth said with barely concealed irritation. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're too emotional, and I can't handle being your emotional support human anymore. Too emotional? In 3 years, I cried in front of him maybe a handful of times. Once when my grandmother died, once after a particularly brutal performance review at work, and yes, during that stupid Pixar movie about the lost toys. Was that his definition of too emotional? I continued scrolling and found text messages to his friend Dave, finally doing it this weekend. Can't take any more of the neediness. You were right all along, man. Dave's response made my blood boil. About time. Remember, they're like buses, miss one and there's always another one coming along in 5 minutes. I felt sick, a cold numbness spreading through my chest and settling in my stomach. I quietly put his phone back and returned to bed, lying as far away from him as possible without falling off the edge. His breathing remained steady, oblivious to the fact that while he slept peacefully, my world had just imploded. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. For the next few days, I acted completely normal. I laughed at his jokes, cooked his favorite meals, and never once let on that I knew what was coming. Meanwhile, I was making preparations of my own. I called Jess and explained everything. Without hesitation, she offered her spare room. Pack whatever you need. You can stay as long as you want, she said. On Friday, while Seth was at the office for his in-person workday, I carefully packed essential items, clothes, personal documents, irreplaceable mementos, and the few pieces of jewelry I owned. I made 2 trips to Jess's place, moving my most important belongings while Seth was none the wiser. Thankfully, we didn't have pets or too many shared assets that would complicate things. That night, I also made sure to email myself the video from his phone, saving it to a private folder. Not because I planned to share it with anyone, but because I needed proof, for myself more than anything, that I wasn't overreacting or misinterpreting the situation. On Saturday night, Seth suggested we go out for dinner. Let's go somewhere nice, he said. I made reservations at Palomino. Palomino is an upscale Italian place downtown, romantic enough for special occasions but public enough that I wouldn't make a scene. Clever. I spent extra time getting ready that evening. I wore the red dress he always compliments me on, did my makeup carefully, and even put on the perfume he gave me for our anniversary. If this was going to be our last dinner together, I was going to look damn good. At the restaurant, Seth seemed nervous. He kept adjusting his collar and checking his watch. We ordered food, but he barely touched his pasta, pushing it around his plate while I calmly ate my salmon. Finally, after our plates were cleared and we were waiting for dessert, he reached across the table to take my hand. Emma, he began, and I immediately recognized the tone from his rehearsal. We need to talk. I looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. About what? He launched into his speech word for word from the video. It was almost impressive how well he'd memorized it. The pauses, the sighs, even the slight tremor in his voice when he said, "You deserve someone who can love you the way you want to be loved." I sat quietly, letting him perform his little monologue. I nodded at appropriate moments, maintaining eye contact the entire time. He seemed both relieved and slightly thrown off by my calmness. So, he concluded, I think it's best if we end things now, before we waste any more of each other's time. There was a beat of silence. Seth looked at me expectantly, probably anticipating tears or pleading. Instead, I smiled, reached into my purse, and pulled out my phone. That was really good, Seth. Almost believable. But I think I prefer the original version. His face registered confusion as I tapped my screen and turned up the volume. Then his own voice filled the space between us, breaking up with a needy one. Take 4. The color drained from his face as he watched himself on my screen, practicing the very speech he'd just delivered to me, complete with his little notes at the end. Emma, I can explain, he started, but I held up a hand to stop him. No need, I said calmly. I think you explained everything perfectly in your video. The needy one, huh? 3 years together, and that's how you see me? He stammered something incoherent, looking around frantically as if searching for an escape route. Oh, and by the way, I continued, I've already packed my things and moved them to Jess's place. Jess is my best friend who, upon hearing what had happened, immediately offered her spare room. I'll come by next weekend when you're at your mom's to get the rest. I've left my key on the kitchen counter, right next to the rent check for my half of next month, so you won't be caught short. Seth's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You're leaving? Just like that? I laughed, though there wasn't much humor in it. Did you expect me to beg you to stay? After watching you rehearse how to break my heart most effectively? I didn't want to hurt you, he said weakly. And yet you recorded yourself multiple times practicing exactly how to do that. I stood up, smoothing down my dress. The thing is, Seth, I'm not hurt. I'm disappointed. Not because you wanted to end things, people fall out of love all the time, but because you couldn't even respect me enough to be authentic about it. I reached into my purse again and pulled out my credit card. I placed it on the table next to the bill that had arrived during his speech. Dinner's on me. Consider it a parting gift. I picked up my purse and started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and just so you know, I sent that video to myself before deleting it from your phone. I have receipts, as they say. The look on his face was priceless, a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and something else. Fear, maybe? Fear that I might share his performance with our mutual friends? I wouldn't, of course. I'm not vindictive. But he didn't need to know that. As I walked out of the restaurant, head held high, I felt lighter than I had in months. The cool evening air hit my face, and I took a deep breath that seemed to fill spaces in my lungs that had been compressed for too long. A memory flashed through my mind, 6 months ago, when Seth criticized the way I laughed too loudly at a friend's joke at a similar restaurant. People are staring, he'd whispered, his fingers tightening around mine in warning. I'd spent the rest of the evening monitoring my reactions, measuring my joy in acceptable doses. Now, walking to my car alone, I let out an exaggerated, theatrical laugh just because I could. The couple entering the restaurant gave me curious glances, and I smiled back without explanation or apology. Maybe I'd been unhappy too and just hadn't admitted it to myself. Or maybe the shock hadn't worn off yet and the pain would hit me later. But in that moment, all I felt was relief, the same sensation as taking off too tight shoes after a long day, finally able to wiggle my toes freely. My phone buzzed with a text as I got into my car. It was from Seth. Can we please talk about this? I made a huge mistake. I didn't respond. Instead, I started my car and drove to Jess's place, where a bottle of wine and a sympathetic ear were waiting for me. It's been a week now. Seth has called and texted countless times. At first, I ignored him completely, but yesterday I finally sent him a message. There's nothing left to say. Please respect my decision and give me space. He hasn't contacted me since. I don't know what the future holds. Right now, I'm focused on finding my own place and reconnecting with parts of myself that got lost in our relationship. Yesterday, I signed up for a pottery class, something I mentioned wanting to try a year ago, but Seth had laughed it off as messy and impractical. I also reached out to my college roommate who lives across town. We used to be inseparable before I started dating Seth and gradually let the friendship fade because he found her too loud. It's strange how clearly I can see it all now, the small compromises that didn't feel like compromises at the time. The subtle ways he shaped me into someone more convenient for him. The hobbies abandoned, the friendships neglected, the opinions softened. Not because he demanded it outright, but because his sighs and eye rolls and jokes gradually steered me away from anything that didn't fit his vision of who I should be. Maybe I was a little needy sometimes, seeking reassurance that I was enough, that I mattered to him. But I never made him feel like he had to perform for me. I was always authentic, even when it wasn't pretty. I showed him my insecurities, my fears, my bad days, and my ugly cries. I gave him the real me, flaws and all. And that's what hurts the most, I think. Not that he wanted to end things, but that he couldn't just be honest with me. That he felt he had to rehearse and perfect his performance rather than simply telling me the truth. That he spent more time practicing how to fake tears than he did actually considering my feelings. Last night, I found myself watching our old vacation videos, the ones from that trip to Maine last summer. There's a moment where I'm laughing uncontrollably at something silly, and the camera shakes because Seth is laughing too. It was real then, wasn't it? Or was he performing even then, playing the role of devoted boyfriend while secretly resenting my laugh, my joy, my presence in his life? I'll probably never know. And maybe that's the hardest part of all, realizing that the person you thought you knew so well might have been wearing a mask the entire time. So that's my story. Not as dramatic as some breakups, I guess, but dramatic enough for me. If there's a lesson here, maybe it's this: if someone shows you who they really are, even accidentally, believe them the first time. Update: 3 days later. Wow, I'm overwhelmed by the support I've received from all of you. Thank you for your kind words and advice. A lot has happened since I posted, so I wanted to give you an update. First off, Seth didn't take my silence well. After I asked for space, he respected it for about 24 hours before showing up at my workplace with flowers and a handwritten letter. Thankfully, my coworkers are amazing and ran interference while I slipped out the back. I immediately called my boss and explained the situation, and she was incredibly understanding, allowing me to work remotely for the rest of the week. Then came the social media storm. Seth posted a vague but clearly directed status about misunderstandings and second chances. Several mutual friends reached out to me, confused and concerned. I hadn't told anyone except Jess about what happened, choosing to simply say we had broken up and I needed some space. But with Seth's public display, I felt I needed to set the record straight, at least to our closest friends. I didn't share the video. That would have been cruel. But I did tell them about finding him rehearsing and about the title he gave the video. The response was immediate and overwhelmingly supportive. 2 of our couple friends, Mark and Alicia, even admitted that Seth had complained to them about me being too dependent just a week before the breakup. Apparently, he'd been laying groundwork for a while. The most surprising development came yesterday when Seth's sister, Claire, contacted me. We've always been close, closer than Seth probably liked. She told me that Seth had been seeing someone from his gym for at least a month. Nothing physical yet, according to him, but definitely an emotional affair. He'd confided in Claire, seeking her advice on how to end things with me kindly. He actually thought he was doing the right thing by scripting it out, she told me. He didn't want to mess it up and say something hurtful. The irony would be hilarious if it weren't so painful. By trying so hard to orchestrate a kind breakup, he created something far more hurtful than an honest conversation would have been. As for me, I'm doing better than expected. Jess has been an incredible support, and I've found a small apartment that I can move into next month. It's actually in a neighborhood I've always loved but Seth thought was too artsy and pretentious. Funny how clearly you can see these little compromises in hindsight. I've decided to block Seth on all platforms. Not out of anger, but because I need a clean break to move forward. I've also started seeing a therapist to process everything and to work on setting healthier boundaries in future relationships. Sorting through our shared possessions has been surprisingly freeing. Seth and I never formally divided our belongings when I left. I took my personal items and left the furniture and kitchen stuff behind since most of it was his anyway. Last week, with Jess and her boyfriend as backup, I went to collect a few remaining things, my grandmother's serving platter, my book collection, and the small watercolor my niece painted for me that used to hang in our hallway. Seth wasn't there. Claire had texted to let me know he'd be out, making the final extraction painless and drama-free. One final note, many of you asked if I was really as needy as Seth suggested. It's a question I've been reflecting on a lot. There were times I wanted more attention than he was willing to give, times I felt insecure when he'd go days barely communicating while traveling for work. But I've come to realize that wanting consistent communication and quality time with your partner isn't being needy, it's having normal expectations in a committed relationship. The right person won't make you feel bad for wanting their presence in your life. They won't label your desire for connection as neediness. And they certainly won't rehearse breaking your heart like it's a performance to be perfected. So here's to new beginnings, to authentic relationships, and to never again settling for someone who makes you feel like your emotional needs are a burden. Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know. Update 2 weeks later. Quick update because so many of you have been checking in. I'm officially moved into my new place. It's small but it's mine, and I've been enjoying decorating it exactly how I want. No compromising on the too feminine throw pillows or the impractical houseplants. Seth has finally stopped trying to contact me after I had a lawyer friend send him a brief but firm letter requesting no further communication. A bit dramatic maybe, but effective. The most satisfying development? Last weekend I was having brunch with Jess when we spotted Seth and his gym friend at the same restaurant. They were clearly on a date, confirming Claire's intel. The best part? She was constantly checking her phone and looking around the restaurant while he talked, seeming completely uninterested in whatever story he was telling with such animated gestures. Jess and I paid our bill and walked right past their table on our way out. Seth looked like he'd seen a ghost, but I just smiled and kept walking. Living well really is the best revenge. To everyone going through something similar, it gets better. Choose yourself. The right person will never make you feel like loving them is a burden. I'm signing off from this saga now. Time to focus on new chapters. Thank you all for being part of my healing journey. Update 3 months later. I wasn't planning on posting again, but so many of you have messaged asking how I'm doing that I thought I'd share one final update. Life has taken some unexpected but wonderful turns. I received a promotion at work that came with a significant raise, which has made living on my own much more comfortable. My boss pulled me aside after I presented a marketing strategy that brought in 2 major clients and said, "You've been shining differently these past few months. Whatever changed, it's working for you." What changed was that I stopped making myself smaller to accommodate someone else's ego. I've redecorated my apartment completely, taking a watercolor painting class and hanging my, admittedly amateur, creations on the walls. It's colorful and perfectly imperfect, just like my life right now. The first night in my fully furnished place, I opened a bottle of wine, ordered my favorite spicy Thai food that Seth always complained was too exotic, and danced around my living room to music he would have called screechy female whining. I caught myself mid-twirl, expecting to hear his criticism, and realized with a rush of joy that the only voice in my head now was my own. Last weekend, I went hiking with a group from a meetup I joined, something Seth always refused to do because he didn't see the point in walking uphill for no reason. We reached the summit just as the sun was rising, and standing there with these new friends, watching pink and gold lights spill across the valley, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. One of the women, a 60-something retired teacher with more energy than people half her age, put her arm around my shoulders and said, "Isn't it wonderful to remember how big the world is?" She had no idea how profound those simple words were for me. I've also started dating again, cautiously and on my own terms. Nothing serious, just meeting new people and remembering what it feels like to genuinely connect without walking on eggshells. It's been refreshing. As for Seth, I've maintained my no-contact rule, but mutual friends have kept me in the loop, despite my protests that I don't need updates. Apparently, his relationship with Gym Girl lasted all of 3 weeks. According to Claire, who still checks in occasionally, he's been doing some soul-searching and has started therapy. Good for him, genuinely. The most meaningful change has been my relationship with myself. I'm learning to recognize and voice my needs unapologetically. I'm setting boundaries. I'm embracing the parts of me that Seth labeled as too much. Turns out, I'm not too emotional or too needy or too anything, I was just too much for someone who wasn't ready to fully show up in a relationship. To everyone who shared their own stories in the comments or sent supportive messages, thank you. You helped me feel less alone during one of the hardest periods of my life. And to anyone currently in the thick of heartbreak, it won't always hurt this much. One day, it'll be a story you tell, perhaps with a twinge of sadness, but mostly with gratitude for what it taught you. This is officially my last update. I'm closing this chapter for good and focusing on writing new ones that don't include rehearsed speeches or hidden videos, just authentic connections and genuine emotions, messy as they may be. Wishing you all the love and respect you deserve.